To boost the birth rate, the alliance forced Michael and me into a compulsory marriage. Our pheromone compatibility was 100%, but he never touched me. The day we signed the marriage documents, he told me coldly, "There are no feelings between us. If we don't have a child within 5 years, we can petition the alliance to dissolve the marriage." So I buried my feelings, and we lived like respectful strangers for 5 years. But at the very end, something went wrong with Michael's rut. Years of restraint, all lost in a single moment of uncontrolled passion. With our 5 years almost up, I went to my friend's private clinic for a full physical. Afterward, my friend stared at the lab results and sighed. "Noah, I'm serious. If Michael ever finds out about this baby, it'll kill him. So either you abort or you run. Your choice." Mr. White, according to the Alliance's investigation, you and Mr. White are currently the only S-Class Alpha and Omega with 100% pheromone compatibility. To address the Alliance's birth rate, we are hereby issuing a compulsory marriage directive for the two of you. Please sign immediately. The Alliance Commissioner's words echoed in my head. As a special case who presented extremely late, I had always assumed I'd be a beta. But after a sudden, unexpected heat, I was confirmed as an exceptionally rare S-Class Omega. The very next day, the Alliance was at my door. The scene shifted, and I remembered Michael's words to me in front of the registry, a frown on his face. "There are no feelings between us, so I won't touch you. As long as we don't have a child within 5 years, the marriage can be automatically dissolved upon petitioning the Alliance." Now, there were only 3 short months left of those 5 years. Outside the car window, the lights sparkled on the ocean's surface. I watched, mesmerized by the setting sun, until someone tugged on the collar of my shirt from behind. I snapped back to reality and turned my head. Michael was sitting on the other side of the back seat, his brow slightly furrowed. "Your pheromones." Clicked. I immediately covered the back of my neck. "Sorry, I zoned out." Michael pulled his hand back and turned to look out the window, his body tense. "It's fine. Just be more careful next time." I pressed my lips together and turned my head away as well. We didn't say another word until the car pulled up in front of the banquet hall. Once we stopped, Michael got out first, then opened my door and offered me his hand. It was always like this between us. In public, we were inseparable, playing the part of a loving model couple. I put on a smile and took his hand. The banquet hall was magnificent. Not long after we entered, a strikingly handsome alpha walked up to us. "You actually decided to let him out of the house?" the man teased. Michael shot him a look. "Chris, no one will mistake you for a mute if you just shut up." I said nothing, just kept smiling. Normally, Michael didn't take me out with him. I only ever appeared by his side for banquets hosted by the 4 major Alliance families, where spouses were required to attend. To the outside world, however, this was seen as Michael being so protective of me that he was reluctant to let me appear in the public eye. The man in front of us clearly believed the same thing. As they spoke, another man walked over. He had sharp features and an earring. Even in a suit, he had a wild edge. "This suit is way too tight. I told you I didn't want to come." He walked up to Chris, shot him a glare, then looked at me, his eyes suddenly lighting up. "Wow, you're an Omega, right? You're beautiful, totally my type." The moment he finished speaking, Michael's pheromones began to surge. I froze. Before I could react, Chris spoke up. "Stop suppressing them. Leo's a beta, he can't smell your pheromones. You're just annoying me." I looked at him in surprise. To be so calm while being pressured by S-Class pheromones. So he was S-Class too. You couldn't tell from his appearance at all, he seemed so easygoing. But then again, you can't always trust what you see. Like right now, he seemed to think Michael was angry out of jealousy, when it was really just annoyance at the man's forwardness. Nothing more than the possessiveness that comes after a marking. "The stuffy in here," Leo suddenly said, turning to me. "You feel it too? Let's go get some air." I instinctively glanced at Michael. He paused, then said in a cold voice, "Do what you want." Chris, on the other hand, didn't notice the tension between Michael and me. He leaned over and whispered to Leo, "Be safe and don't wander too far." I gave a self-deprecating smile. The contrast made me feel pathetic. The courtyard outside the banquet hall was filled with countless flowers, some with names I knew and some without. I heard it's because the host's daughter is a huge fan of flowers. Leo and I were sitting on a bench, and he was clearly trying to make conversation. Really? It is beautifully arranged, I said, playing along. He scratched his head, thought for a moment, and said, I'm a straightforward guy, so I'll just say it. You and that alpha of yours, something seems off. Usually, an alpha is super protective of the one they've marked. I couldn't help but feel awkward. He had seen right through us after just a few minutes together. This wasn't something I should be discussing with a stranger. But maybe the feelings I'd suppressed for so long were finally bubbling up, or maybe it was because the 5-year mark was so close. But for once, I felt the urge to confide in someone. I smiled at Leo and said, That's because we don't have a permanent mark. Michael had never touched me, so of course we weren't permanently marked. Whenever my heat came, he would just leave a temporary mark on my neck and then leave in a hurry to avoid losing control. For an S-class Omega in heat, a temporary mark was like drinking poison to quench a thirst. After a brief moment of relief, the returning wave of heat was even worse. The emptiness, both physical and emotional, made me cry until I couldn't stop, but there was never anyone there to comfort me. I had also never seen Michael through his rut. Every month, he would disappear for a period of time, then return as if nothing had happened. He never said anything, so I never asked. And just like that, we passed 4 peaceful, uneventful years. After the banquet, Michael started acting strange. He was often inexplicably anxious and restless, and he started working from home much more often. Once, as I passed his study, I heard fragments of a heated argument. He must have been on the phone. Chris, where are my meds? Are you insane? You've been my direct supplier for 4 years, and now you're telling me you're out? Then how am I supposed to handle my rut? I was back in my room before I could hear the rest. Whatever he was talking about, I didn't want to know. The more I knew, the more I would hope. And in the end, I would be the only one who got hurt. But a message I received from Leo after that made me uneasy. Don't worry, man. I got you. I didn't understand what he meant. For the next couple of days, whenever I tried to leave the house, Michael would stand at the top of the stairs, staring at me, looking like he wanted to say something. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore and spoke first. Sir, is something wrong? He pressed his lips together. Where are you going? To the university, I answered honestly. I have 2 classes today. Can't you skip them? He asked suddenly. I froze, hesitating for a second. No. Without a valid reason, that would be considered professional misconduct. I looked at him. Is there something you need? He seemed to snap back to himself, his brow furrowing. No, it's nothing. Go on. Just pretend you didn't hear me. With that, he turned and went into his study, slamming the door behind him. I stood there for a moment, thinking, but ultimately left. After all, in 4 years, nothing had ever happened to Michael that required my concern. This time would be no different, right? I thought I'd be able to head home right after my 2 classes, but the department called a last-minute meeting. With one thing after another, it was already 9 o'clock by the time I got home. My phone had died hours ago. The villa was eerily quiet. None of the lights were on, and the housekeeper, who usually greeted me, was nowhere to be seen. Everything felt wrong. I gently opened the door, about to survey the situation inside. Suddenly, a ferocious wave of pheromones slammed into me. The next second, my wrist was seized, and I was yanked into a hard embrace. Hot breath washed over the back of my neck, and the sensation of sharp canines against my gland sent a violent shiver through me. Instinct recognized him before my mind did. My own pheromones rushed to the surface, mingling with the ones flooding the air. This was bad. Lured by his scent, my body was already starting to heat up. Sir, I pushed against the man in front of me, shouting to try and snap Michael back to his senses. Then, fumbling for the wall, I found the switch and flicked on the lights. Blinding white light instantly filled the villa. Michael let out a low groan and froze. Only then did I see that his face was flushed, and his eyes were brimming with tears. What in the world was going on? It hurt so much. Michael stood there, tears suddenly streaming down his face. He didn't seem to be fully lucid. His gaze was unfocused as he just looked at me and cried, "My Omega! I want my Omega! Why didn't you come home? The house was full of other people. I looked everywhere for you. Where did you go?" I stared at him, stunned. This version of Michael was so unfamiliar it was hard to believe. A word, both familiar and foreign, surfaced in my mind. Rut. But it was rare for an alpha's rut to cause such a drastic personality change, let alone a complete loss of reason. "Sir, are you in your rut?" I asked. Michael's pheromones saturated the room. If I weren't an S-class, I would probably already be in a full-blown heat, throwing myself at him. But the 100% compatibility was still my undoing. I could feel my thoughts turning sluggish, my reason slipping away. Releasing a small amount of soothing pheromones to envelop Michael, I steadied my trembling voice. "Sir, you need to stay here. Something's wrong. Is it okay if I call a doctor?" In an instant, Michael looked like an abandoned child. He took a step toward me, then wrapped his arms around me in a death grip, sobbing. "It hurts so much. I feel like I'm dying. Why are you trying to call someone else? Where are you going? Aren't you my Omega?" His emotional spike sent out another overpowering wave of pheromones. My knees buckled and I nearly collapsed. "Okay, I won't go. I'll just make a quick call. Is that okay?" I soothed, struggling to stay upright. After half dragging, half carrying him to the sofa, I immediately used the landline to call my friend. "Hello?" A voice answered. "Mark, something's happened. I think Michael's in his rut, but something is very wrong." I did my best to organize my chaotic thoughts and explained the situation to Mark. Mark was quiet for a moment before speaking, his tone unusually serious. "Noah, it's definitely his rut. And from what you're describing, my guess is he's been on special suppressants for a long time. For whatever reason, he didn't take them this time, so all the pent-up pheromonal heat is hitting him at once. That's why he's lost his mind and reverted to a primal state, seeking only his mate. During this time, he'll be completely submissive to you in order to mate. The level of submission depends on your compatibility. With your match rate, he'd probably jump off a cliff if you told him to." His voice grew stern. "So right now, you need to order him to stay put, and then you need to get out of there. Don't help him. Once you go into heat and lose your senses, it's all over. From what I know, the backlash from this kind of rut is severe. He won't remember a thing when he's lucid again. Just act like it never happened." Before I could answer, Michael's arms tightened around me. It was as if he'd heard. He whimpered, his voice thick with pleading, Please don't go." For a second, I had a vision of my own heats. I'd always wished for Michael to stay, just like this. But I was never brave enough to say it, afraid he'd see into my heart. And every time, without exception, he would leave in a rush, never looking back. "I know. I'll handle it." Hanging up with Mark, I looked at Michael and asked softly, "Sir, why were you taking medication?" He froze. His tear-filled eyes blinked in confusion. I let out a bitter, self-mocking laugh. "Pheromones are so unfair, aren't they? You don't even like me, but right now they're making you desperate for me. A heat without a partner is so hard to bear." I looked at him and whispered, "It's just so hard." The Michael in front of me shouldn't have been able to understand. But for some reason, he seemed to cry even harder, tears falling in streams. I wiped them away and, just before my own sanity snapped, said, "Let's go back to our room." For that entire week, Michael dragged me along with him, and I was barely conscious the whole time. There were only 2 moments of clarity. Once, I managed to call in sick for myself, citing my partner's rut, and another time, I sent a message to Michael's secretary in his name. The secretary seemed used to it and didn't ask any questions. The 2 times I diverted my attention from Michael, he dissolved into a crying mess. The abnormal rut ended completely on the morning of the 7th day. When I woke up, my body ached all over. Michael was still fast asleep. The moment my senses returned, the full weight of what I had done finally hit me. Michael probably wouldn't thank me for helping him through his rut. From his perspective, this compulsory marriage, which was just 3 months from being over, had suddenly become complicated. He would probably just think I had taken advantage of him. The gland on my neck was still tingling. I didn't need to look to know that Michael had marked me. Mark had said the side effects of this kind of rut were severe, and that Michael would be unconscious for at least 2 days. I immediately got out of bed and went to the bathroom, forcing myself to ignore the pain as I cleaned myself up and tidied the chaotic house. Then I opened the windows to air the place out, trying to erase any trace of what had happened. The story would be simple. I had left as soon as I realized Michael was in his rut, and he had endured the week alone. As I was about to leave, the instinct to crave my alpha's pheromones, a side effect of being marked, began to surge, but I ruthlessly suppressed it. After all, that was something I had always been good at. When I got to Mark's place, I sniffled and rang the doorbell. It was already fall, and the weather had turned chilly. In my rush, I'd just thrown on a random jacket before fleeing. I didn't even dare to bet that Michael would actually stay asleep for 2 whole days. A moment later, a sleepy Mark opened the door. He froze when he saw me. "What are you doing here?" He seemed to wake up a bit more and stepped aside. "Get in here. Where have you been the last few days?" "Couldn't reach you." I smiled weakly as I stepped inside. It's a long story. The door closed behind me. The next second, I heard Mark's shocked roar from behind. "Holy shit." He grabbed my arm and spun me around. "What the hell is this?" He pointed at the back of my neck. "You tell me what the hell this is." I sniffled again. Speaking calmly, "You're the doctor. Do you really need to ask me?" "It's a mark." He took a deep breath. "Don't you dare tell me it's permanent." When I didn't answer, he completely lost it. "Didn't you tell me you were going to handle it?" I nodded. "Yeah, I handled it." Mark swore again. "So what's the deal now? What are you doing here?" I fell silent, then said after a couple of seconds, "You said he wouldn't remember. Can I hide out here for 3 months? He never asks about me anyway. After 3 months, he should just file for divorce on his own." "That was just a guess. What if he remembers?" Mark yelled. "We'll cross that bridge when we get to it." "I'm so tired." "I want to sleep," I said quietly. I'd barely slept at all that week, just drifted in a hazy, unconscious state. Mark looked like he wanted to say something else, but when he saw the messy bite marks on my neck, he just sighed. Go. The guest room's still yours. Go get some sleep." I gave him a smile and, knowing my way, went straight to the guest room and collapsed onto the bed, leaving Mark to pace and sigh in the living room. When I woke up, it was already afternoon. My body still felt heavy. I left the room to find Mark sitting on the sofa with his arms crossed, a serious expression on his face. "Come here. We need to talk," he said, glancing at me. The inevitable had arrived. I obediently sat down across from him. "Did he force you?" Mark asked in a cold voice. I paused. "No, I was willing." He took a couple of deep breaths, his eyes fixed on me. "Why did you help him? Did he help you during your heats? What would have happened if you just let him suffer?" I looked away. It was precisely because I knew how hard it was to suffer alone that I'd made that choice. "He won't remember anyway. In 3 months, we'll be divorced, and we'll never have to see each other again," I said, dodging his question. Mark sighed. He composed himself and spoke earnestly. "Noah, it's not that simple anymore. It's true that an unmarked alpha can have countless omegas in his lifetime. He might not remember marking you, but the fact that he marked you completely means—" He hesitated, then continued, "It means he nodded inside your womb." I froze. Something I should have thought of long ago finally registered in my foggy brain. "Do I even need to spell out what your class and compatibility rate mean? If you didn't use protection, the chances of you not getting pregnant are ridiculously low. And if you are pregnant, there's no way the Alliance will approve your divorce petition." Mark's words exploded in my head. Protection? Did Michael and I use protection? During that week of frenzied rut, did we use any protection at all? Of course not. Seeing the color drain from my face, Mark understood. He rubbed his temples. "Get dressed. We're going to my private clinic for a checkup. We can do it off the record." He paused, then added helplessly, "Though honestly, I think we both know what the results will be." Looking at my test results, Mark sighed for the 3rd time. He opened his mouth, then closed it, before finally saying, "Noah, From what you've told me, if Michael finds out this baby exists, he won't be able to handle it. So either you abort or you run. Your choice. I had already lost the ability to think. The clearly elevated hormone levels on the test results said it all. What should I do? I looked at Mark. Mark stared at me and said bluntly, my advice is to terminate. Terminate. The moment the thought entered my mind, the gland on my neck throbbed with pain. My stomach instantly cramped, and I felt an overwhelming urge to vomit. What was wrong with me? It's an Omega's nature. The instinct to carry a child overrides everything else, Mark said suddenly. But I still have to say it. You've been permanently marked by Michael. If you want to keep this child, you'll need his pheromones. Otherwise, you'll have to get the permanent mark removed and find another alpha to provide them. I was stunned, my hand resting on my flat stomach. After a long silence, I heard myself say, let's remove the mark. Mark pressed his lips together. It's gonna hurt more than you can possibly imagine. It's okay, I said, forcing a smile. I can handle a lot of pain. Mark looked at me for a long moment, then lowered his eyes. Get ready. We're going to the operating room. Mark never lied. It wasn't just more painful than I could imagine. It was more painful than every injury I'd ever had in my life combined. Even if I could ignore the physical agony, the psychological breakdown was even more suffocating. The sense of fulfillment from the permanent mark gradually vanished, replaced by a struggling, gaping void. Felt like a part of my soul had been ripped away. I couldn't stop screaming and crying through the whole process. My mind was consumed by a single thought. Why are you taking my mark away? What did I do wrong? Until I was completely exhausted. You're awake? I blinked my dry eyes and looked at Mark. It's gone, he said. I froze, then sat up in bed, overcome by a feeling of emptiness. I touched the back of my neck and felt nothing but a scab. Mark pressed my hand down gently. All right, don't think about it. I have a friend on the east side, an alpha with some influence. You can stay with him for a while. He'll take care of you. Just then, the door clicked open, revealing a man with a delicate face. Hey there. The newcomer smiled and waved. He was dressed flamboyantly in a floral shirt with sunglasses perched on his head. His skin fair. Alex, what's with the peacocking? Mark said, exasperated. Hey, this is my normal style, okay? So where's the person you wanted me to pick up? The man, Alex, saw me and paused, then broke into a grin. Wow, so handsome. Must be a high-level one, huh? Same as you, Mark said coolly. My friend just got hurt. Take him back with you and look after him for a while. Fine, Alex drolled. Guess I owe you one. Ready to go? I frowned, hesitating for a moment. Mark patted my shoulder reassuringly. It's okay. He's trustworthy. The east side is far away. There's no way Michael will find you there. He handed me a phone. This is my spare. Call me if you need anything. So I nodded, took the phone, and followed Alex out of the hospital to his flashy red car, which was just as flamboyant as he was. Alex chattered away the whole drive, probably trying to lighten the heavy mood that was visibly clinging to me. He drove for over 10 hours before finally stopping at a villa in the suburbs. Here we are. The house has everything. Let me know if you need anything else during your stay. Alex smiled and went to open the door. I followed him inside and my eyes met with someone standing on the stairs. The person was tall and lanky, with a cold expression. It was a different kind of cold from Michael's unapproachability. This was more like the coldness of an untouchable, lofty flower. The next moment, he looked at Alex and spoke. You brought an Omega home? Alex froze, then quickly waved his hands in explanation. No, he's Dr. Mark's friend. He's just staying with us for a while. He looked at me and made the introduction. Noah, right? This is my younger brother, Evan. He's a beta. I keenly sensed the tension in the air. I looked up at the young man and said, hello. My husband and I had a fight, so I'm imposing on Mr. Chun for a little while. Evan's expression softened slightly. He turned and went upstairs. My brother hates it when I bring people home, Alex whispered to me. I smiled and nodded. It's okay. I understand. Life at Alex's house was peaceful. His schedule was completely erratic, but Evan's was the exact opposite, so I ended up spending more time with Evan. He seemed to be a top student at medical school and had already joined the RD team for a major corporation's new miracle drug, even playing a key role. I was quite impressed that a beta could be so capable. Every day around noon, when Alex woke up, he would give me a round of pheromonal comfort, which helped lessen my pregnancy symptoms. Things changed 3 months later. For the first time, his pheromones had little effect. I was so sick I felt like I was dying. When I called Mark, he seemed to be in a rush and only said a few words. This is a critical period for fetal development. Alex isn't the baby's father, after all, so it's normal for his pheromones to not be as effective. Have him bite you. A little bit of pheromones injected through the gland will lessen the rejection. Alex and I stared at each other. He looked at my paper white face, hesitated for a second, then slapped his thigh and moved closer. Ah, come on. Your face is so pale you look like you've been dead for 3 days. Scaring me. Let's just get it over with. Before I could say anything, he had already pulled down my collar. The sensation of canines against my gland was sharp and familiar once more. My mind instinctively flashed back to Michael's mark, and I shuddered violently. The next second, someone clapped a hand over Alex's mouth and yanked him backward. Evan's face was so cold he looked like he could kill. He shot me a furious glare, then practically hoisted Alex upstairs, slamming the bedroom door with a deafening bang. This was bad. This was very bad for me, and it looked like it was very bad for Alex, too. By the time my head cleared, my body felt a little better, but Alex and Evan still hadn't come down. I shook my head and grabbed my keys to go out. A trip to the pharmacy for some medicine should help. As I picked out what I needed, I tried to clear my muddled thoughts. Evan's feelings for Alex, they didn't seem right. It was more than a typical brother's possessiveness, and his hostility toward me today was especially unusual. A thought occurred to me, and I sighed. Maybe I should find a new place to stay. This felt like it was going to get very complicated. Besides, the 3 months had passed a couple of days ago. Michael should have filed for the automatic divorce by now. That means I should be able to go back to the west side, right? The young cashier scanning my items kept stealing glances at me.
I smilte her.
Is there something I can help you with? She jumped. Then, as if making a momentous decision, she gathered her courage and said, Sir, the last time you were here, your suppressant patch was peeling off, and I noticed you have a scar from having a mark removed on your neck. That's illegal, and since you're a pregnant man buying soothing pheromone supplements alone, I have to ask if you are a victim of sexual abuse? Seeing me freeze, she took my hand. Don't be afraid. I found your spouse's information through your medical card and reported him to the Alliance yesterday. He'll definitely be brought to justice. I was completely dumbfounded. What was she talking about? How could she still find my spouse's information on my medical card? Once the 5-year term was up, the marriage would be automatically dissolved as soon as Michael filed the application. How could I still have a spouse? Wait, I didn't have time to respond. I pulled my hand away and reached for my medicine. Just as I picked it up and started to turn, a heavy weight fell on my wrist, and I was pinned against the counter. The hand holding me had well-defined knuckles, and on the ring finger was the Alliance-certified wedding band. A familiar pheromonal scent enveloped me from behind. The gland that had once been marked began to heat up, then started to itch. Michael placed his other hand on the counter, effectively trapping my trembling body in a loose embrace. He leaned in close to my ear. Well, long time no see. I forced a smile, trying to appear as calm as possible. Sir, long time no see. Have you been well? He chewed on my words. Well, my husband disappeared for 3 months without a trace. I couldn't find him anywhere. Then I finally get a lead, only to discover he's in some tiny pharmacy on the east side, thousands of miles away. You tell me, am I well? He stared at me, the pheromones saturating the air, making it clear just how terrible his mood was. The young cashier had long since hidden herself away in fear. For some reason, a sharp pain suddenly shot through my lower abdomen, so intense that my vision went black. The next second, I lost consciousness. What the hell did you just say? The first thing I heard was Michael's voice, then Chris's. I said, he's pregnant. You suddenly released such high-intensity pheromones that you sent his body into shock. And I don't need to tell you what that scar on his neck means. He's been permanently marked before. It was all for nothing. I slowly opened my eyes. Michael noticed immediately and turned to look at me. You're awake. Chris raised an eyebrow. I'll leave you two to talk. The door closed, and I finally had a chance to look around. We were in my and Michael's home. Michael stood by the bed, silent for a long time, before finally speaking, his voice hoarse. Who was it? I didn't understand. What? He looked at me. The one who marked you. The father of the child. Who is he? I met his gaze. What will you do if you find out? I'll kill him, he said flatly. I looked away, changing the subject. The 5 years are up. Why didn't you file the divorce petition? Michael froze. The day we got married, didn't you say we would get a divorce as long as we didn't have a child within 5 years? He remained silent. At the time, he started to say something, then stopped, only managing, this child, just pretend it's mine. Now I was the one who was truly stunned. What? I'll handle the alliance. I know they won't let an Omega terminate a pregnancy, so when the child is born, we'll just say it's mine. Rest for the next couple of days. Then I'll take you back to the hospital for another checkup. Without another look at my dumbfounded expression, he left the room. Chris hadn't left, he was standing right outside the door. Michael looked at him and asked directly, will my pheromones affect the child? Chris raised an eyebrow this time. You're going to raise another man's kid? Michael gave him a cold look. You dare spread that around and see what happens. Chris laughed. And who was it that swore he'd never end up like his father? Michael fell silent. Mr. and Mrs. White were a rare case of a compulsory marriage from that era. Back then, the birth rate wasn't nearly as low as it is now, and the alliance was far less humane. Simply because Mrs. White was the only S-class Omega at the time, they matched her pheromones to Michael's father. The two were forced to complete their permanent marking right there in an empty room at the registry, bound for life. A mere B-class alpha with such high compatibility with an S-class Omega, Mr. White had hit the jackpot. But what no one knew was that he had fallen in love with the breathtakingly beautiful woman at first sight. Mrs. White, however, despised her partner, and she despised their child. As an S-class Omega created through pharmaceutical research, her mental state was unstable. She believed Mr. White and the alliance had conspired against her. So she used her pheromones to manipulate Mr. White into doing terrible things, trying to force him to agree to a divorce. That's why Mr. White was always covered in injuries. But he would always tell Michael, don't blame your mother. Giving birth to you was much more painful for her than it was for me. He would wink at his young son. Don't tell mommy, but daddy isn't very sensitive to pheromones. When Michael was 12, Mr. White drove into the city in the middle of the night to buy flowers for his wife on a whim. He got into a car accident and never came back. Mrs. White's mental health deteriorated further, and she passed away the following year. Michael finally concluded that his father was a fool, his mother was a fool, and they were both pathetically foolish. And so he grew to hate the class system, hate pheromones, hate the alliance, and eventually hate any form of intimacy. He never imagined that what happened to his parents would happen to him. He would never sacrifice himself for an Omega like his father did, and he didn't believe in love born from pheromones. He wanted a divorce. They registered at night. The S-class Omega stepped out of the car, his face gentle. He had a cool, aloof air, but his overall presence was incredibly soft. No wonder there was no moon in the sky that night. The moon was right here. It must be the pheromones, Michael thought. He was being bewitched by an S-class Omega, just like his father. All he had to do was get divorced later. And so the years passed. He tried to keep his distance, to prove he was different from his father, only to become a frantic mess when that person disappeared. He finally realized he hadn't mentioned divorce to him again since that day. In the end, he was no different from his father, hopelessly foolish. In the examination room, Chris was looking at me strangely. He was smiling, a mischievous glint in his eyes. What is it you want to say? I asked, exasperated. These past few days, Michael's behavior toward me had been incredibly odd. He barely spoke to me, but he never left my side, giving me no chance to even think about leaving again. No matter how many times I asked him why he didn't get a divorce, he wouldn't answer, just kept brewing anti-miscarriage tonics for me. I used to think Michael was easy to read, that he wore all his emotions on his face. Now I couldn't understand him at all. Chris winked at me. I sent him out on purpose. Isn't there something you want to tell me? I frowned. What do you mean? Seeing that I genuinely didn't get it, he clicked his tongue and lowered his voice. Fine. If you won't talk, I will. For certain reasons, I did a little digging on you. Guess what I found? My eyes widened. Couldn't be. You lived in an orphanage as a child. He narrowed his eyes, smiling. The very same one Michael made a large donation to on a whim when he was a boy. What a coincidence, wouldn't you say? I clenched my fists. Even if he knew that, he couldn't possibly know anything else. I forced a calm smile. So what? I didn't steal or rob anyone. Living in an orphanage isn't exactly a big deal. Chris wagged a finger. Nope, that's not it. Do you know what my field of research is? Pheromone compatibility. And now that I've had a major breakthrough, I finally have the confidence to tell you this. I froze, a bad feeling creeping up inside me. Pheromone compatibility isn't innate. On the contrary, before a person presents, it's constantly influenced by their subconscious mind. It only solidifies upon presentation. And the fact that your compatibility with Michael is so astonishingly high is just mind-boggling. I already knew what he was going to say next, but there was nothing I could do to stop him. The truth I had hidden for so long was casually laid bare by this man. You've been deeply in love with Michael since before you even presented. Haven't you? A dead silence fell. Chris spoke with such conviction that there was no point in denying it. Besides, how could I argue with an expert? What do you really want? I asked. Are you trying to get me to divorce your best friend? To tell me not to stick around with my baggage? He looked stunned. Why would I do that? Now I was stunned. I'm just tired of watching you two mutes suffer in silence. Could you two please just talk it out and then go to the Public Alliance Hospital? My doorstep is about to be worn through by the two of you. And my consultation fees are actually very expensive, he said with a smile. But Michael has never once paid me. What in the world was happening? And what did he mean we were both mutes? After I got in the car, Michael slid in right after me. He was still silent, just looking through the test results one by one. A phrase suddenly popped into my head. My silent husband. Sir, there's something I need to tell you, I said suddenly. Michael looked up from the papers, startled. Go on. You wanted to know who the baby's father is, right? I watched him. Michael paused, his fist clenching slightly, then said, Yes, tell me. I pointed. He frowned and looked behind him. There weren't many people on the street outside. He looked for a couple of seconds, then turned back. Which one? I took a deep breath, and this time, I pointed directly at his chest. You. A flash of confusion crossed Michael's face. And you're the one who permanently marked me, I added. Before I had it removed. He was completely bewildered. I laid it all out for him. It happened 3 months ago during your abnormal rut. And the first time I met you wasn't at the registry. It was at the Sunshine Orphanage. You were just a kid visiting with some people from the Alliance. Life at the orphanage wasn't great. You found me in the backyard, fighting for scraps of food, and you helped me win. You said you would make sure we all had enough to eat, and then you gave me a small piece of paper with your name written on it. After you left, someone donated a large sum of money to the orphanage for food, and the Alliance sent someone to oversee it. When I went to him with your note, he told me he was supposed to give me a double portion. I smiled at him. Chris said we're both mutes. I was curious if you also had something you wanted to say to me, so I went first. Michael stared at me, then blinked slowly. He opened his mouth, and I finally heard the word I was hoping for. Yes, even Michael's story came out in fits and starts. He didn't seem used to opening his heart to people. The way he carefully chose his words was almost pitiful. You poor thing, I said after he finished. He frowned. Me? I nodded. Thinking about how he was during his rut, it was probably because he'd suppressed his emotions for so long, never allowing himself a proper cry, that he ended up sobbing so pathetically. Did you know you cried a lot during your rut? I squeezed his cheek. Cried, and you wouldn't listen to a word I said. He stiffened. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for how I was during the rut, he said again. You remember? I asked, confused. No, but I'm sorry. He hung his head like a guilty puppy. I'm sorry for being a mute, and for making you go through having the mark removed. I'm sorry. I cupped his face in my hands. This was bad. This wasn't Michael's usual persona. Seeing this expression on his face was a little unfair. After we talked everything out, I finally had my first checkup at the Public Alliance Hospital. The next day, the doorbell rang. Michael went to get it. An old man with graying hair stood outside, weeping. Jules, you finally have a child. Boo-hoo. Back then, your uncle saw you were all alone and wanted you to get over the shadow of your parents, so I petitioned the Alliance to find a compatible Omega for you. I never thought you two wouldn't have kids for so many years. And then a little while ago, I get a report saying you were abusive. You scared your poor uncle to death. Boo-hoo. Michael's face was a mask of indifference as he slammed the door with a deafening crash. Before I could process what had happened, I heard the man pounding on the door, wailing, Jules, let your uncle in for a peek. The baby in there will want to meet its great uncle. I was lounging on a recliner and kicked Michael's leg. What's wrong with you? Why'd you lock him out? Just then, the man's tone changed, becoming angry and exasperated. You brat. I'm the one who found you this husband. What right do you have to keep me out? Michael, who was stirring a pot of porridge, paused. He stood up, pulled a bag of candy I had bought on a whim 5 years ago from a cabinet, opened the door, and threw it out. Wedding candy, he said, and slammed the door again. That stuff has to be long expired. Is that really okay? Michael looked at me and said, he thought you couldn't have children and tried to convince me to divorce you. So he was holding a grudge. In the days leading up to my due date, Michael was more anxious than I was. He tossed and turned, unable to sleep, and even threw up several times. The moment I finally managed to lull him to sleep, I went into labor. Because of all the earlier complications, my situation wasn't good. Michael stayed by my side at first, but his unconsciously released pheromones were so thick that the doctor's hands were shaking. They eventually had to kick him out. After what felt like an eternity, a doctor emerged from the operating room, calling his name with a grave expression. Don't save the child, he blurted out. Seeing the doctor's stunned expression, he frowned and said sharply, the child doesn't matter. Just save my husband. The doctor, both father and son are fine. I was just going to ask you to go sign the forms with the attending physician. When I regained consciousness, the first thing I heard was arguing. The attending physician, with your class and compatibility, you'll get pregnant almost every time you have sex. Michael, what if I have my gland removed? The doctor, horrified, are you trying to die? Can a person even live without their gland? You may not want yours, but I want mine. Then what do we do? Can't be this dangerous every time he gives birth. The doctor explained patiently, not every time, not every time. This was an exception. I'm not taking that chance again. Then we can remove his womb. Some omegas with medical conditions choose to do it. It has some initial side effects, but no major long-term problems. This time, Michael's voice was ice cold. Impossible. If anyone is having surgery, it's me. Then what do you want me to do? Besides removing the womb, there's no way to be 100% certain of preventing pregnancy. The doctor said at his wit's end. Chris, I might have a solution. So I'm developing a new drug. It makes alphas infertile. You could be my test subject. Michael, give it to me. After a long struggle with my heavy eyelids, I finally opened my eyes. This time, Michael noticed immediately. He walked over, his fingers gently touching me. You're awake. I blinked, my voice hazy. What were you guys arguing about? He paused for a beat, then lied without a hint of a blush. We were arguing about what to name the baby. I smiled. Sigh. Still a mute.